Mic'd up.
Of the Rovner Report, mic'd up platform, AJ Rovner, Steve Shanamanico. We'll talk about the Mets and Yanks, but breaking news just about an hour ago, maybe a little bit longer in Rangers Town. So Mike Sullivan returns to the bench for the New York Rangers. He'll be the head coach this upcoming season. A pristine background, has succeeded both internationally and more well known for the work he's done with the Pittsburgh Penguins, being a Stanley Cup champion there, of course. So he was an assistant coach and then immediately got the job from the Rangers to Pittsburgh, and now he comes back after his firing less than a week ago. So talk to me a little bit about the Sullivan signing.
I happen to like him. I'm not a big fan of getting retreads or, coaches that have been around for too long. A few years back when they were rolling around Mike Babcock, I wasn't a fan of them hiring him, which they eventually didn't. But Sullivan, I like. I think he's a player's coach. I think he's got a good disciplinary background in him. I think he gets a lot out of his players. So, while, like I said, I don't usually don't fan of just some guy that just gets canned from one team and they get rotated around, which seems to be the way of the world in the NHL. I do happen to like Sully, so excited for what I think he could bring to the team and hopefully a major turnaround in 25-26.
Well, it's a really interesting stretch because when the Rangers won the Cup in '94, they won the President's Trophy 2 years before. Then they didn't make the playoffs the year before. Then they hired a coach with the first name Mike, and then they won the Cup. So, really interesting way that the world works sometimes. Of course, Mike Keenan led them to the '94 Cup. Now it's Mike Sullivan. So President's Trophy to not making the playoffs to hiring a coach with Mike. Now, can they win the cup and do the exact same thing that the 92 to 94 Rangers did over 30 years ago? A little bit about Sullivan's track record. Coached Boston for 2 years. Went 70, 56, and 15 there. And then he went to Pittsburgh. I mean, phenomenal record. 409, 255. And it doesn't tell me his overtime record, but 907 points in 753 games. Two-time Stanley Cup champion there. Coached the United States team in the Four Nations. So certainly a really proven track record. And been on the East Coast for quite a while now. So Sullivan, welcome back. And then the other big piece of Rangers news, I'm not going to talk about Parson too much, but the other big piece of news is the Rangers booth will now be completely turned over with Sam Rosen's partner, Joe Micheletti, after 18 years, hanging up the mic. He will also retire. I think it's first class of Micheletti to give Sam all the spotlight and wait for his announcement. I mean, I certainly think he did that intentionally. I think he knew he was on his way out as well. So to let Sam get his flowers, I thought was really cool. But totally new booth. It's an iconic duo that will now be replaced by, I've heard rumors, Albert's the play-by-play. Maybe it's Ron Duguay. Maybe it's Steve Valiquette. We'll see. But talk a little bit about Micheletti and maybe a potential replacement.
Yeah, I agree with you. Definitely knew that he was going out as well, and had to be taught hard at times knowing that and not being able to, I guess, share it with the public. I don't know if Sam knew about it or not, but anyway, yeah, did a good job, Micheletti. You always need the commentator guy to be more of a homer than your announcer, and Sam was as professional as there was. So when he had JD was such a huge Ranger fan, big homer. I thought Micheletti had a lot of that homer in him. So they did a nice job. Valiquette, love what he brings to the table with his analysis, with his passion, with his critique, fairness, and honesty when it comes to the players. Calls them out for what they are. Dave Maloney's another name that might fit that spot. But I think they got a nice group to choose from. So that should be a nice change and some optimism looking towards next year after what turned out to be a pretty down year for the.
Certainly agree that it is a historic duo that will be replaced and will be very hard to top. From the ice to the diamond we go. We'll talk about the Yankees and Mets, who, of course, in the caption that was listed pre-show, both these teams still lead their respective divisions in the AL and NL East, respectively. The Yankees are 18 and 13. Mets are 21 and 11. Crazy to think that we are already over 30 games into the MLB season. We'll start with the Yankees' most recent stretch here. Of course, the news about just roughly a little over 2 hours ago, Jazz Chisholm Jr., oblique, 10-day IL. You know, usually obliques are much longer than 10 days. Chisholm off to a dreadful start, to my knowledge. 181, 304 OBP, 410 slugging. Has hit for a little bit of power. He's got 7 homers, but that's about it. Striking out the most on the team. He's got 39 of those. So a loss there. Stanton just went to the 60-day IL, but that's going to be retroactive, so not that big of a deal there. So we left off for these Yanks. They went back home for Toronto for a 3-game set. And then they went to Baltimore. They went 3-3 since we were last on here. So we'll start with the Toronto series, see how good your memory here is, Steve, or just a little bit of a general overview. They lost the first game 4-2. Believe Devin Williams blew another save in that game, to my knowledge. Is
He,
that correct?
yeah,
Yeah, I believe he blew another save in that game. And then got rained down on Saturday. Max Fried with another masterclass on Sunday, the first half. I mean, he's just unbelievable. 6 innings, 5 hits, none earned. ERA goes to 119 at that point. And then taking the rubber game against a red hot Chris Bassett, who the Yanks knocked around a little bit. Judge homered yet again. So taking 2 out of 3 against Toronto. Steve, talk to me a little bit about that series. Anything I missed?
yeah. You mentioned the opener, tough loss with Williams blowing another one. It's been well documented his troubles that he's had, and he's now been removed from the closer role, trying to get him straight again. See what happens with that. But they rallied, after the postponed game, they had a big game, 11-2 win, and a 5-1 win. Fried was all. They beat 2 good pitchers. You always like to see that. Gausman and Bassett, former Met, has been pitching really well this year. So it's nice to see him bounce back from those 2 from the loss, and especially when the closer blows a game for you, which has happened too many times already in the early going. Good to have the team rally and come back and win the 2 at the stadium before they headed to Baltimore.
Now let's go right to the Birdland, where Baltimore has certainly been the biggest disappointment of the MLB season so far. Of course, one of the most electric young offenses in the league that is not showing out to this point. But the Yanks did drop this series. We'll start with game number 1, losing 4-3. This was a game where the Yankees were resilient, trailed 4-0 early. Judge with another RBI. Doubles by Volpe and Wells in the 8th were ultimately still not enough. Will Warren got knocked around in this one, 4 earned and 3 1/3. Yarbrough did a nice job, though, eating some innings of scoreless ball. Next day, just like game 2 of that Toronto series, the Yankees bats came alive, 15 runs. Judge yet again, homer in the first. Guy is unbelievable. Carlos Rodon. This was the good Carlos Rodon. He's either looks like an ace or a guy that shouldn't belong in baseball. But here, 6 innings, 2 earned, 7 Ks, an absolute annihilation by New York. This wasn't competitive. 12-0 by the fifth. And then we will turn our attention to the rubber game under 48 hours ago. Carlos Carrasco, who I can't believe is still in baseball. 3 1/3, 4 earned. Seems like he's bad every start. Judge, homer, then had an RBI single in the seventh. I know I bring him up in every recap because he does something every recap. And then, yeah, this was a game where the Yankees were resilient yet again, just falling short. Down 5-3 going into the seventh. Cut it to 1, but couldn't find a way to ultimately get the W. So 3-3 on this most recent stretch for him. Steve, talk to me about the Baltimore series.
Yeah, you mentioned Rodon. When he's on, he's Cy Young material, and when he's not, walking too many guys that always seem to come back, score, and haunt them. But he was on in that game, and they scored plenty of runs for him as well, which sometimes helps a pitcher depending on their personality. But Rodon did win the game in the series. Two close losses. Bautista got both saves. Yankees, had chances to tie it up in the ninth, but they really didn't muster anything against him. I think he had 3 innings in both ninth innings, including Judge. I know one of the at bat. Don't like to lose 2 out of 3 to a team who got off to such a rough start as Baltimore. Like you mentioned, split the 6 games between Toronto and Baltimore. Now they're headed to Tampa. Chisholm, you mentioned that goes on the DL. It's hard to say you're going to miss a guy that was hitting 181. I think the Yankees have plenty of moving parts that could go in there and fill in his spot until he gets healthy again. But as far as the Baltimore series, would have liked to have taken 2 out of 3 instead of losing 2 out of 3, but didn't get fell behind in a couple of games and couldn't come all the way back at the timely hit late.
Before we turn over to the Mets' most recent stretch, I mean, this is just incredible what Aaron Judge has done. I can't go through this episode without talking about his numbers. Playing every game. He's batted .427. This isn't the first week anymore. I mean, we're into May. .521 on base percentage, .761 slugging percentage, 1.282 OPS. I mean, he has a WAR of almost 3 already. I mean, that's just not heard of. 10 homers, 32 RBIs, 50 hits, 7 doubles. He's the best player in the world right now.
Yeah, when you take his numbers over, because he got off a bad start last year, you take his numbers over his last 162 games, they're mind blowing. I think in 104 games in Baltimore in his career, he has 47 homers. Everything the guy does statistically and then on the field is really unbelievable. And for a guy who strikes out a lot, he's even cutting down on the strikeouts this year, which is only going to help his overall production. But yeah, I don't know why guys are pitching to him. I know he got a couple of walks in that Baltimore series. It was a wild pitch. A guy went second. They just put him on. Obviously, thing to do. With he's doing this without anyone hitting behind him. That's really doing anything much, which is shocking. I mean, Paul Goldschmidt's had an unbelievable year, but he's only got 213 ribbies, so he's not a big power. Whether he hits behind or leading off. So yeah, what Judge has done, unbelievable. We're watching modern day, Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio without really realizing it because those guys are such historical figures. But Judge is insane.
Judge leads the Yankees in runs, hits, triples, homers, RBIs, total bases, walks, average, OBP, slugging, OPS, and WAR. Just a historic start for number 99. Let's move on to the National League, the Mets. It's a little bit of their toughest stretch of the year so far. I mean, it's hard to continue the pace they were going at. Mets have won 3 and 4 since we were last on. They did not have an off day. They took 2 out of 4 against Washington. They really should have swept that series. This was an incredible Friday night game where they lost 5-4, down 4-0. 3-0 going into the eighth. Vientos bases clearing triple to take the lead, only for Ryan Stanek to blow the save. Edwin Diaz was not available. The game number 2 against Washington, they came back 1-2-0. Not much to say in that game. Diaz ninth inning. Holmes was solid. Clay Holmes, another guy that came over from the Yankees, like Sevy. It's been great. 3-1 with a 2.64 ERA. Francisco Alvarez was a difference, hit a 2-run homer to give New York the victory. In game 3, the Mets, another game they led going into the ninth inning. A game they led 7-1 going into the bottom of the seventh inning, only to lose 8-7. Another blown save by Ryan Stanek, his second in 3 days. But the Mets wind up tying the rubber game. 9 RBIs for Nimmo. That ties a club record. 19-5 final. Every single Met had a hit except Lindor. Just an all-around excellent effort by the squad. Luis Urania gave up 5 earned runs, but got the save because he threw 3 innings. That's a funny anecdote to that game. Then they came home, played Arizona. They had a franchise record going into that series, 13 consecutive series wins at Citi Field dating back to last year. That has been snapped. Mets won game 1 8-3. Game they led 8-0 going in to the top of the fifth. It was really not competitive on Friday night. Good outing by David Peterson. He battled 5 innings and earned 3.06 ERA. Then you go to Wednesday night. This was a game in which New York led 1-0 going into the top of the seventh. Had bases loaded, nobody out, bottom of the ninth, down 4-1, down 4-2, and ultimately could not come back. Then yesterday, rubber game, very entertaining. Lost 4-2 though against Arizona to lose their first series at home. Soto did hit 2 homers, first player in Citi Field history to hit 2 homers to the opposite field in the StatCast era. I mean, both bombs over 400 feet, but ultimately it was not enough. Senga not really no distance. 4 innings battled, but not enough distance, as I just reiterated. So, Steve, talk to me a little bit about what you saw about the Mets over these last 6 or 7, for that matter.
Yeah, you mentioned the 2 Washington losses, easily could have won both. You don't see the Mets blow a 7-1 lead to anyone, especially Washington, who's a 500 team, I guess I call them best. Holmes has been great, pitched really well in the 2-0 win. Canning has really showed me a lot. He's got a lot of mock on the mound. He comes up big in big spots when he puts guys on base. It's one thing to put him on, but another thing to keep him stranded. And he seems to be doing a lot of that. He had the 5-1 win against the Phillies, and then the 4-1. Then he turned to 4-1 in the blowout game, the 19-5 win, in which I think Nimmo had the 9 ribbies in that game. Yeah, then they opened up with a nice win. Peterson's just been solid pitching. They opened up at home to win. I said, listen, if they could beat Burns and Gallen, man, this team really be impressive. And turned out they weren't able to. They both pitched pretty good games. The Mets hung in there. Alvarez had the bases loaded, hit a ground at third, had a chance to win on Wednesday night. And yesterday, the first time really that the bullpen failed them by giving up the 2 solo homers. Every time the Mets got within 1, they gave up a homer. But the Mets don't give up, man. They're always scrapping. They're always clawing back. The team where you got 27 ounces, tough to beat them. Met fan point of view, you got to love seeing Soto hit 2 monster bombs the other way. Kind of the old Darryl Strawberry guy had great power ball fields. Even losing cause, you like to see that. You want to see him getting him straight. Obviously, big part of the team. Early assessment for me of the Mets is Pete's been awesome. Alonso all year. Lindor, slow start. He's up to 300. He'll probably be around there all year. Solid guy. Other than that, it's been mixing, matching, and coming up with timely hits. Vientos is right around the Mendoza line. He hasn't gotten hot yet. Nimmo had one great game. You take that game out, and the guy's mediocre at best.
Yep.
Tyrone Taylor, what a freaking catch he made in left center.
A phenomenal
I,
set.
I saw the ball hit. I'm seeing it was hit up high, and I'm still like, that ball is going to bounce off the warning track for a ground rule double. And that guy goes full extension, all out, not worrying about the warning track, not worrying about the left fielder. Phenomenal catch. I love the way the guy plays. Gets some timely hits. He's not in there for his offense. Jesse Winkler, he's like a cult hero to you guys, the Mets. He's got his beard and his long Jesus Christ hair, and he's got like one home and 9 ribbies at 219. But he's another guy that seems to come up big when you need him, and
He does.
they just piece together wins, the Mets. It's not one guy, one game. It's another guy, and pitching staff. Them and the Yankees, two teams. I mean, all teams love to use the bullpen these days, but the Yankees, man, they use a lot of pitchers every game and game out, which sometimes could hurt you, especially now. Mets getting a couple of injuries in the bullpen,
Yep.
but
Both lefties they had all year, Minter and Young. Young's most likely done for the year. Minter's
yeah,
like,
yeah. I mean, he impressed me. He impressed me striking out Hopper and Schwarber a couple of back. Yeah, tough to replace those guys. Give you those middle innings. But Mets Yankees are plus 52 in the run differential. Only the Cubs are equal to them, so they're both winning a lot of games big.
now let's turn to. We'll answer one or two of these questions. Let's see here.
With the loss of Minter to the Mets bullpen, do you think they should acquire a significant eighth inning guy, as the guys who are there now may come up short?
Big fan of David Robertson. He's the first guy that comes to my mind. Proven track record, good everywhere he goes. Is really good for the Mets in that 23 season. So I'd be really happy to see Dave come back to Queens. I know they just signed Brooks Raley, so I'd be happy. I'll be happy once he comes back in about July, coming off Tommy John surgery. We'll answer a hockey question too, Steve. You could take this one.
Do you feel that the Rangers' hire of Sullivan and Tortorella can make a big difference in putting him back on the playoff trail?
Well, as we touched on earlier, I do think Sully is the kind of guy that brings good structure to the team, plenty of experience, great resume. It's all about the players responding also. I love Torts, but, didn't have too much success in Philly, especially this year. I thought he was given ample time to turn that team around, and he fell short there. But maybe as a combo between the two of them with tons of experience, they're able to work with the veterans and the younger players to get the right mix, the right locker room feel and chemistry, and put it to use and success on the ice. So I'm cautiously optimistic with the two guys. Got to see about player personnel coming up. We definitely need some improvement in that area, especially on the back line. But right now, step in the right direction. A little optimism going into the summer.
Let's turn our attention now to the next two series for each one of these teams before we wrap it up here on the Rovner Report, episode 51. Yanks got a little bit of a homestand here, Stevie. They'll play the next 6 at home. They'll play the Tampa Bay Rays, currently Fried, Schmidt, Warren lined up. Pepio, Little, Bradley lined up for Tampa Bay. We'll talk a little bit about the Rays here. 14 and 17. That's good for 4th in the AL East. Looking at some of their offensive numbers here, Christopher Morel is off to a nice start. Oh, wait, no, maybe not. He's hitting 215. He's got 3 homers, 11 RBIs. Not really much here. Junior Caminera's probably been their best hitter. He's got 6 homers, 13 RBIs. Jonathan Aranda, no, he's been their best hitter. Excuse me. Aranda, 4 homers, 14 RBIs, batting .308. Not too much firepower on the offensive side of things. No one with more than 6 homers. No one with more than 15 RBIs. Brandon Lowe, huge step back. He's batting .209 now. Yandy Diaz batting, it's the guy they really like in the leadoff hole, but he has a .299 on base percentage. Really, really struggling offense, it seems. Yeah, like I was looking at guys, they got 11 RBIs as some of the leaders I see here. So no one with more than 17 runs, no one with 10 doubles. I mean, it's not too good on the offensive side. Pitching, though, go to the pitching. Pete Fairbanks is a .238 ERA. That's their closer. He has 6 saves on the year. Shane Baz, .386. Papillo, .424. Bradley, .458. Little, .503 ERAs, respectively. That's really their 4 main starters, all struggling with over 4s. They don't strike out a lot of guys either, usually under a K per inning. So get ready for, I feel, an offensive explosion from the Yanks. Talk to me a little bit about Tampa, Steve.
Yeah, you mentioned the offense. They're not a big threat. They have 7 guys with 10 or more RBIs, but the leader's only got 15. So they play small ball. They spread it around. You mentioned the pitching staff. Nothing much to speak of as well. Lost 3 straight. Couple of games under 500. So team they expect the Yankees to kind of have their way with. So coming to the stadium.
And then you go to this will be a really good test for New York for this weekday home series against the San Diego Padres, playing by far the best division in baseball. There's not a remotely close second. Currently 4 teams that would make the playoffs. I can honestly see it going that way. I also think that the Rockies might finish as the worst team ever just because of how good that division is. However, they have their first winning streak of the year. It took until May. Almost impossible to be 15 games out of first place on May 2nd, by the way. They're on pace to be about 70 games behind the Dodgers at season's end. Anyways, back to San Diego. They just took a series from the Giants. 1-2 there. This is a team that's loaded offensively. The battle of Juan Soto's ex-teams went from San Diego to New York, of course. Fernando Tatis, 345, 409 OBP, cheater. So I always feel differently about guys that cheat, but he's their leader. Leads them in runs, hits, triples, homers, RBIs, total bases, walks, doesn't strike out a lot, leads them in stolen bases, pretty much every offensive category. Very similar to Judge. Machado is playing fine, 279, 336, still one of the best at the hot corner as you will ever see. Xander Bogaerts been very disappointing since signing that long-term deal from Boston, but he was a Yankee killer when he was at Fenway. And then Luis Arias seems like every time you look at him, batting .300, but I hope he's okay. Really scary collision, but I'm happy to see that he is still out there performing day in and day out. Would be remiss if I didn't bring up Jose Iglesias, Mr. OMG from last year. Still batting .278, 333 OBP. Can always flash the leather. Starting pitching, they have probably the best 1-2 punch right now in baseball, but it's not Dylan Cease. It's Nick Pivetta and Michael King. Of course, Michael King known to be a Yankee, 4-1 with a 2.09 ERA. Nick Pivetta, man, 5-1, 178.82 WHIP. That is some Cy Young caliber numbers. Their closer is Robert Suarez, building right where he was last year, .64 ERA, .57 WHIP. He has turned into one of the best closers, if not the best, in the sport. Talk to me about San Diego, Stevie boy.
Yeah, nice surprise team. They're battling it out with the Dodgers, who was supposed to be the runaway team in that division. Michael King, another Yankee, got away. Unbelievable how they let these arms go. And what a surprise Nick Pavetta has been. 6 starts, giving up 7 earned runs, more better than a strikeout per inning. Last 4 starts, only giving up 4 earned runs. And Dylan Cease, we know what he brings to the table. He's gotten off to a rough start, so if they could get him on track, they'll really be more formidable than they already are. So it'd be a tough challenge. I always say good pitching always wins out over good hitting. So be a good challenge for the Yankee bats.
Couldn't agree more. Will be a challenge yet again. San Diego will be a really good test for the Pinstripes in 3 days. We turn to the team in Queens. However, they won't be playing there. It's interesting. They'll play St. Louis and Arizona Arizona second time in a week, and then St. Louis second time in like 2 or 3 weeks, and that'll be it for the year. Holmes, McGill, and they'll probably bring up someone from AAA, maybe a Brazo Bond be the opener, and then Canning, and then Peterson and Senga to wrap up the trip in Arizona. Gray, Fetty, Palante, then Burns, Gallen, Kelly will be the sixth the Mets face on this 6-game trip from St. Louis to Arizona, 2 different time zones. Mets will play in 3 different time zones within the next week. That's always a challenge. So let's talk about St. Louis a little bit here. 14-18 got off to a good start. This was kind of expected. I'm going to see them as big sellers at the deadline. Moved Wilson Contreras to first base to hopefully have him with more offensive production. It's not been there. Been 218. Arenado got off to a red hot start. He's really cooled off. This looks a lot like the Rays, Steve. Not really a lot of offense. Lars Nootbaar is their best offensive player right now. Probably 5 homers, 18 RBIs. You go to their pitching. Sonny Gray and Matthew Liberatore have been very nice, each with under a 3.6 ERA. Their closer is Ryan Helsley. He's great, but doesn't really have much time to close. He's got 4 saves. A lot of former Mets on this pitching staff. You got Phil Maton, who single-handedly made my face red in October. And Steven Matz, of course, was on that World Series team in 2015. Talk to me about the Cards.
Yeah, Mets swept them 4 earlier at Citi Field. And when your leading home run hitter is 5 home runs, you're having some trouble offensively. 4 games under 500, but a much better 10-5 record at home compared to 4 and a dismal 4-13 on the road. Another team, I think, going to have a lot of trouble with the Mets lineup and with their pitching staff. I could see them running their win streak to 7 versus this team.
And then, very interesting, don't see it a lot, but with the inter-league schedule now, 2 teams from New York at the same time playing a team in the NL West. I don't know how many times you could say that simultaneously, but that's what will happen. The Mets will face the Arizona Diamondbacks, go out to the desert. 17-4. Crazy how many teams Arizona's played in a row from the NL East. They played Atlanta for 3, then the Mets, then the Phillies, then they'll play the Mets again. Corbin Carroll had huge expectations going into last year. Really underperformed, but now he's back to himself. He's playing great. He's got 4 triples already. Wow, 4 triples. 8 doubles, 9 homers, 5 steals, batting almost 300. Their nice surprise, Josh Naylor coming over from Cleveland. Batting 319, 395, 4 homers, 19 ribbies. Eugenio Suarez, I believe the 11th player in MLB history, did 4 homers in the same game. Even less did it in 4 at-bats in a row. Geraldo Perdomo's having a nice bounce-back year. He's batting 275. Pitching-wise, Justin Martinez, one of the best closers in the game, but got hurt. against the Mets. He just went to the IL, so they'll mix and match. They got Shelby Miller, Ryan Thompson, guys who could certainly close. Big free agent acquisition was Corbin Burns, pitched great yesterday, but hasn't been awesome overall. Brendan Pfaadt, 2.78 ERA. Eduardo Rodriguez, man, he's really fallen off since Detroit, 6.06 ERA. The Mets hit him around pretty good. But Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen have been mainstays there for a while. Excuse me. And they both have over a 4 ERA. Arizona, Steve, what do you see?
Well, getting back to Suarez, I think it was the 19th play.
19th? Gotcha.
If you go back to 1894. But no, they impressed me against the Mets. They give some good at bats. Senga's a tough pitcher. He gets his fastball up mid 90s, and he's got that ghost splitter. And they were fouling balls off, tough balls off. They were laying off some balls. They made him work hard, and eventually got him out early. So they're a real good team. I was impressed watching them this series. Good at bats. They spread the offense around. They got 3 guys over 20 RBIs already, and real good, solid pitching staff. So they'll be a good challenge, as we saw the last 3 with tough games for New York. The last 2 are anyway. They're only 8-8 at home. I don't know if that means anything. Could just be some early season statistical thing, but yeah, it should be fun. There's 3 games at Citi Field are fun against the team, so they get the pitching and hitting going together. I think they'll battle for at least a wild card spot.
Agreed there. Any closing thoughts about hockey? We brought up UC Parson very quickly, re-signed with the Rangers. NBA playoffs have a game 7. Nuggets, Rockets, NHL playoffs.
Well, Knicks proved their
Yeah.
toughness and mettle last night, and as they have so far in a lot of games, trailing late, making some big defensive stops, coming up with clutch shots. I don't think they get past Boston, but we'll see. I mean, they got, it was a tough, grinded out series versus a much improved Detroit team. So good to watch if you're a basketball fan for the New York area. Hockey playoffs have been, if not enjoyable, surprising not to see Florida beat Tampa, but then 5 games, I think, surprised a lot of people. Dallas, Colorado has probably been the best series. That's going 7. I'm shocked Edmonton got past LA. End of the season, LA was firing on all cylinders, and Edmonton had some injury issues and weren't playing well. They beat with their backup goalie, Calvin Pickard. And without McDavid and Draisaitl really leading the charge, they've been doing it with spreading the wealth out. Evander Kane's come back. He gave them a pretty good boost. Ottawa gave it a good shot against Toronto. Toronto finally at least got rid of the early demon yesterday by beating them in Game 6. They'll go on to play Carolina, right? No, not Carolina.
Toronto plays Florida.
Florida, yeah. Major challenge. Florida is just, solid all around. Great goalie. If you look around the NHL playoffs, usually goalies and defense stand out. That has not been the case in the first round. I mean, a lot of goals being scored. A lot of so-called good goalies get planted. Jake Ott doesn't look good. A lot of goals being scored in the first round. Usually playoffs come around, and a lot of low shot totals too, which lends itself to what I always thought playoff hockey was: a lot of block shots, a lot of back checking, tough to get quality scoring chances. But for some reason, these guys are finding the back of the net with pretty good frequency. But we'll see how it goes. So far, first round's been pretty enjoyable.
I believe Winnipeg, St. Louis is tonight, to my knowledge. Correct?
Yep.
Game 6. And then I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. That's the game tonight. So that'll wrap up episode 51 of the Roving Report. AJ Rose, Steve Shanamanico will be back next week for you to talk about some more New York baseball. Hopefully that continues to go in the positive direction, considering we talked about a hockey team for 6 months that was pretty much negative every show. So hopefully the good times continue on the diamond. But yet again, AJ Rovner, Steve Shanning, we will be back next week. Enjoy the weekend, everybody.